Hey, Taylor Elwood here, and welcome to the latest episode of the Men's Mysteries. Today, I thought I would tackle the subject of modern masculinity and what it even means to be a man in today's world. As you know, I talk a lot about anxiety and the experiences that men have around that. And I think that where this intersects as far as exploring modern masculinity is, quite frankly, men have a lot of anxiety around figuring out what it means to be a man. And this isn't exactly new. This has been happening for a little while now. And it makes sense. You know, for a long time, men had this particular narrative where they were the providers. They were supposed to go out there and work the jobs. And then some things changed. And I think ultimately those things, what changed was a change for the better in some ways. And in some ways, it was a real challenge, though, for men. And I'm talking about feminism in this case. And I want to be very clear when I talk about this that I'm not saying that feminism is the root cause or problem for why men are challenged around like what it means to be a man. I think that if anything, feminism is just a symptom of a larger issue. If we really look at this concept of modern masculinity and the idea of men, being stoic and not really connecting with each other, that's really only happened in the last 150 or so years. Think about that for a moment. Like the concept of modern masculinity is not always been set in stone. Like I think a lot of times what I see when people talk about masculinity is they talk about it in a way where it's almost like they treat the modern version of masculinity like it's always been that way. And that's not the case. What it meant to be a man 200 years ago was in some ways different. And part of that was because there was more of a community connection and support in place that I think has been lacking in the last 100 or so years, maybe a bit longer. And so when we look at this concept of modern masculinity, I mean, on the one hand, men have been told, big boys don't cry. You're not supposed to show emotions. You're supposed to be fine, or you're only supposed to show so much. And otherwise, it's expected that you're going to have all the answers, that you're going to show up in a certain way. And that puts a lot of pressure on men. And yet, I see a lot of men like that to this day. This is known as the Marlboro Man. The guy who's like the tough cowboy who can smoke a pack a day or a couple packs a day and go out there and get all the cattle in and take care of everything, and he solves all the problems on his own. Well, the Marlboro Man is a lie. Not only that, but the guy who actually was the Marlboro Man died of cancer and was miserable and alone. Not exactly the kind of aspirations that I think any man wants to go to. On the other hand, men are told you need to be vulnerable, you need to open up, you need to share emotions. But too much of that being done actually becomes a problem too, because then men are told, well, you're being in your feminine too much. You're not masculine enough. And then it kind of this kind of brings us to a place where it's kind of like, well, what does it even mean to be masculine in the first place? I see a lot of advice out here on Substack, on YouTube, and other places where it's like, well, men need to be in their masculine more. What does that even mean? Is it that a man's supposed to be, again, stoic and grounded and hold all the boundaries and basically provide everything and provide a roof and everything else? Or is it something else? The other day I saw a post from a woman, and she said, the man I want is I want to be with a man who's railing me in my sundress underneath the roof that he provided. Okay, fair enough. I get it. And yet I think about that statement, and it's like, here's this statement where this person's basically like, I want the man to provide all of this. And there's no there's not really much in the way of giving back. And then on the other hand, we have, well, men and women are equal, they're the same, and men are supposed to be able to figure that out. And yet that hasn't really worked either. Men and women are equivalent, but there are differences. And those differences are not necessarily a bad thing. They're actually worth celebrating and acknowledging. Men, for example, don't have the same physiological or biological cycle that women have. And I think that men being aware of that is really important, because a man can show up better for his partner when he shows an awareness of her physiological cycle, and can be aware that there are going to be some days where she's going to be supercharged and energetic, and other days where she's not, because of just what's going on within her body. It's another example of this very real aspect that I think needs to be paid attention to. And so we talk about what it means to be a man. I think that really it's important to recognize, men, that you don't have to have it all figured out. And you're going to have a lot of talking heads, mine included, who are going to tell you, well, this is what it means to be a man. I'm not necessarily even telling you what it means to be a man. I'm actually just questioning the whole premise, but you're going to get that a lot. You're going to have red pill men who are going to say, well, being a man, we got to be traditional. We got to go back to where women are relying upon us for everything, and we're the ones who get sex and everything else, and everything else, because women are just going to use us for our money anyway. That's not a particular narrative I agree with or want in my life, frankly. Then we're going to have the narrative where men need to be sensitive and in touch with their emotions and share everything that they're feeling. Well, yes and no. I think that there is some very real truth to the fact that men, in a lot of ways, when they're told to be that way, in some ways are giving up a core essential truth of themselves. And I guess a way I'll put this is, there's a story I have here. A couple years back, I was at a full moon ritual, or no, it was a new moon ritual that was being run. It was a co-gendered experience. And one of the men said, he's like, I want to be in touch with my divine feminine so that she can help me get rid of my toxic masculinity. And he was talking about the fact that, him being a man was a real problem. And later on I said, well, I'm embodying the sacred masculine, the healthy masculine. And I shared that, and he didn't really know how to respond to that, because he had this view of himself that being a man was bad. But being a man is not a bad thing. And I'm not going to apologize for being a man. I will take responsibility for the actions that I've done, and I take responsibility for the fact that there are some social constructs that I've grown up with that I've needed to deconstruct that have been unhealthy. But I'm proud to be a man. I like being a man. And one of the things that I find really fascinating about this whole journey around masculinity and men's work is that what I've discovered is that what men really need is healthy, grounded friendship and brotherhood with other men. They also need to take care of themselves. And all of these things are very important, and all of them have been, in a lot of ways, lost. We've been sold on this vision of the rugged individualist, but the rugged individualist isn't real. There's no man or woman, for that matter, who isn't where they're at without the help of other people. In fact, if you look at your own life, you can clearly see that at some point in time, someone had to change your diaper and feed you and take care of you in order for you to get to a point where you could start to take care of yourself. If nothing else, you had at least that much happen. But I'm willing to bet that you had that occur a number of other times. And so when we look at modern masculinity, I think the narrative that we really need to look at is men discovering what it means to be in grounded, healthy relationships. And what I've found is that what creates a lot of the anxiety for men is that men are expected to have all the answers around being a man, and they're expected to show up a certain way. But what they don't, what is also expected is that they're not able to ask for support or help. And that isn't working. There's a reason why the men's movement has become so prevalent, because men are seeing more than ever that going it alone does not work. Going it alone actually keeps men from being in their full power, from living a healthy and embodied life. So one of the things that's really important is that we explore like what it means to be a healthy man in the context of not just being in relationship with ourselves, but being in relationship with other men, being in relationship with our partner, and being in relationship with the communities around us. Men who don't have that kind of embodied, healthy relationship are not going to be men who feel safe or grounded. And I think a huge part of the issue that so many people have around men is like they're saying like men aren't safe. Well, I get that. I get that. Men, there are a lot of men out there who are dangerous, but not a danger. Personally, I want to be a danger, but not dangerous. And what does that mean? It means that I'm able to handle myself. I'm able to take care of myself, and I know what to do when I need to do it. But part of that happens in community. It happens with other men. What I see so often is men try to go it alone. And then what ends up happening is they hit a pressure point and they collapse. They lash out. They break down. They aren't able to keep it together. They aren't able to emotionally regulate themselves. And of course, as a result, people around them don't feel safe. But what those people around them don't question or ask is how much of that is because I've asked these men to show up in a specific way, but I haven't provided them the support or encouragement. And let me be very clear. When I say all that, I don't want to put that all on women and say women are supposed to somehow, soothe men. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is that men need other men. They need other men, and they need that relationship in a collaborative way instead of in a toxic, competitive way, which is so often what is billed and portrayed to men. I spent a lot of my childhood and most of my years as a man competing with other men. I didn't trust other men. I didn't trust that they had my back. And it really damaged the way I showed up. I was dangerous and not a danger for a long time because I didn't know how to really connect with other people in a safe and grounded way. I didn't feel safe with myself. And as a result, I certainly wasn't safe for anyone else. And I think this is the challenge that so many men face in general, is that they don't feel safe with themselves. And the reason they don't feel safe with themselves is because they don't have anywhere to turn. When a man is told that he's got to have it all figured out, and then he starts to not have it figured out, what does he do? He's going to start shaming himself, beating himself up. And this is part of what modern masculinity has given us. It's given us this perspective of, you have to have it all together. You have to have all the answers. That doesn't work. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to think very carefully about your own definition and experience of being a man. What is it? Have you been the Marlboro man, or are you the nice guy, the codependent, needy, nice guy that wants that basically bends over backwards trying to get someone else's approval? Or can you be a grounded and embodied man who's in touch with himself, who takes care of himself, takes care of takes care of his presence, takes care of the people in his life, and is taken care of by his community, is taken care of by his other men, and takes care of those men as well? That's what we really need in order to find healthy, grounded, embodied masculinity. There are a lot of men out there who are looking for that, and they aren't finding it right now. There are a lot of men who are looking for answers, but they're looking in the wrong places. The right place is going to be with men who are doing their inner work, and they're doing it in a way where they're not rejecting women. They're not hating on women. But what they're doing is they aren't also putting on women the expectation that those women are going to take care of everything around them. They're not putting the burden on the woman to have all the answers or to do the emotional labor or the work. Instead, what they're doing is they're showing up to do their part of the emotional labor, and they aren't necessarily always doing it with their women. One of the healthiest things that can happen for men is when they have relationship with other men. And you might notice below this post that I have an announcement about the Grounded Brotherhood. The next cohort starts September 2nd. And this is for men who are anxious. This is for men who are feeling ungrounded. This is for men who want a better relationship with themselves, with the partner in their lives, and just in general with the world around them. They want to feel safe, and they need some support with that. The Grounded Brotherhood is part of how you're going to get that support. This is a cohort where we're going to be meeting for 3 months, week after week, doing the necessary work to create that grounded sense of embodied reality. So if you're interested in that, click the button below or click the link if you're watching on YouTube, so that you can explore that for yourself. It's really important that we have this sense of grounded, embodied masculinity. There's so many men who don't have it, and we need it more so than ever. And we're not going to find it on our own. We're going to find it with each other. And this is part of why we need to look at what the definition of modern masculinity and ask ourselves, is the modern definition helping us? I think the answer is no. And I think the expectations that are being put on men are just creating more pressure and more stress and more anxiety. It's not what men need. What men need to face their edges. They need to challenge themselves, and they need to face the parts that they're not willing to maybe share with everyone else. But they need to do it in a way where they have that resilient and supportive community that's got them. And that's going to happen with other men. So if you're looking at your own definition of what it means to be a modern man today, which I invite you to do, explore that and ask yourself, like, is this the definition I really want? Is this the definition I've come up with, or is it a definition that someone else has given me? And if it's a definition that someone else has given you, then question that definition carefully, because the fact of the matter is we need healthier versions of masculinity, and we're not going to have that as long as we continue to just accept the definitions that have been given to us now. And you know, it's not going to happen when we're told, well, you have to be a certain way in order to be a man. Create your own definition, your own experience, and do that in the context of getting help with other men. That's what we're going to be exploring in the Grounded Brotherhood. Thank you for watching, and I look forward to hearing your comments on what it means to be a man today.